Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly discussion series that's hosted by the Chaldean Cultural Center in collaboration with U of M Detroit Center, Unique Voices in Films, and CMN TV. I'm your host, Wiamne Mu, and today our guest is Keith Famie. Hello, Keith.
Hi, how are you? An honor to be
Good.
here.
Well, thank you for joining us. So, you are multi-talented, but this month is Culinary Arts Month. So, we invited you for that, but then you've been involved with the Chaldean community with several other projects. So, we'll fit you in another month, I'm sure, in the coming years. So, but you are a director, producer, and for many years, you're known as a celebrity chef and a Metro Detroit restaurateur. You were selected as one of America's best new chefs in 1989 by Food and Wine magazine. Esquire magazine chose your restaurant as best new restaurant in America on two separate occasions. You've been a finalist on the 2001 reality television series Survivor, the Australian Outback, and you've hosted your own Food Network series, Keith Famie's Adventures, traveling the world documenting cooking styles from the plains of Africa to monk monasteries of Taiwan to the lifestyle of Key West. You've been awarded 12 Michigan Emmys and nominated several other times for your rich human interest storytelling. You recently did a project called Detroit City of Faith, which we will also discuss. And of course, you're working on another project, or probably two or three or four, who knows? But let's start from the very, very beginning. And you were known as a celebrity chef in Metro Detroit, and then you shifted to documentary filmmaking. That is an interesting story right there. Let's start with that first and then see what inspired you to those different directions.
Well, so you want to know how does a chef go from being a chef in the kitchen wearing an apron to behind a camera directing and producing documentaries for PBS? And
Exactly.
the transition is actually quite simple, but it seems complex. So yes, so I had my own, of course, I was a chef in Detroit for many years at Chez Raphael, and then I owned my own restaurant, Les Auteurs, in Royal Oak, and then I ran and operated Forte as the chef in Birmingham there in the late 90s, and then I ended up on this small TV show called Survivor, and where I found myself in the middle of the outback, hungrier than I've ever been in my entire life, going from 170 to 143 pounds in 41 days. And I survived. And I always say that the game of Survivor really begins when the game's over. That's when the game really begins for you, as far as what can you do with that time that you spent playing what's called a game. By the way, it doesn't feel like a game at the time. You really do feel like you are surviving. And so I was fortunate to sign with Food Network, and we produced 28 half-hour shows and 4 one-hour specials all over the world, from Kenya to Taiwan to Tahiti and Memphis and Key West, everything in between. And I wrote cookbooks and, had all kinds of appearances and all that kind of good stuff, Today's Show or Regis and Kathy, Oprah, all that kind of stuff. And it was a really an astonishing time in my life to be able to do all of that. It was really fun. At the time, though, my father was going through Alzheimer's, and I was his custodial guardian, and I was taking care of him. And when he passed in 2003, I was there when he took his last breath, and my mom was there holding his hand, and I was too. And I guess it just emotionally, I guess a light switch was flipped, and I just decided I no longer wanted to be this adventure chef guy anymore. I was just done with being in front of the camera. I was done cooking for everybody. I wanted to find a way to use what my talents were in the production world, because I had my own production company, because I formed that in '97, to tell stories. And so I pivoted, and it was, in the first few years, it was very complicated, because immediately I'd walk into an environment to do an interview or film with somebody, and they, of course, think, "Where's your restaurant?" were you cooking, et cetera, et cetera. How does a chef become a director, producer, all that stuff. So it took, many years. And fortunately, to this date, it's been over 20 years now. And, we've actually accumulated, we are now at 23 Emmys. So as a company, for all of our documentaries and films, and several national awards too. But I chose to tell stories that I felt could help people. I wanted to help people tell their stories. I wanted to give everyday people an opportunity to learn about who they are, their struggles, their life, their cultures, their ethnic groups, or just some of the journeys they've been on. And I came up with this philosophy that I wanted my documentaries to always put a mirror on the audience, so that they look in the mirror and say, what about me? Or what have I learned from this? Or how is this going to affect my life? So we really just started working on films that could somehow open the world up to everybody about somebody else's world. And we've done that for many years. We started with our first big documentary was our Italian story. Then we did our Arab American story, our India story, our Greek story, our Polish story. Then we started branching and working on more documentaries about other facets of life. We did our Greatest Generation, took a captain back to the beaches of Normandy, did our Vietnam generation, took a Marine back to Vietnam, did a film about Can You See How I See, what it's like to be blind, did a 3-hour film about Alzheimer's, and 2-hour film about cancer, 13-part series about women and aging, 7-part series about men and aging, did an astonishing, touching film called Mary's Journey, where we followed a young lady who's 23 who had a tumor in her heart, cancer, on her journey to understand just how lonely cancer could be. So I'm drawn to these kinds of stories where I know I can impact the lives of individuals that we're filming with, but also the rest of the world and our audience can understand and learn from the journeys other people have been on. And that's where we are today. So here I am.
So, and how did you prepare for that, Keith? Because I know you've even written a book about making documentaries that I started reading. I find it very interesting. So, what did you do to make that transition? But you said you already had a production company, but did you have to go beyond that, try to, educate yourself in certain ways, or did you just throw yourself out there? Because nowadays with technology, I mean, I'm assuming when you started, it might have been harder because it wasn't as easy as today. You can just go out anywhere, and your crew, their gear is very light in comparison to what it was in the past and such. How was that transition? How did you have to prepare yourself for something like that?
That's true. There was a fairly enormous learning curve. I'm kind of a curious cat, so I'm driven by curiosity, and then or not understanding something, and that takes me down a rabbit hole of wanting to tell a story because I don't understand it, so I want to better understand it, or I'm inspired by something. We did a film called Chromosomally Enhanced: What's Your Superpower, about what it's like to live and thrive with Down syndrome. All stem from a meeting of one individual with Down syndrome. It was a curiosity. But as far as the early years, I'm kind of guy that just rolls his sleeves up and figures stuff out. And so that's kind of what we did, and I did early on, I've been fortunate to have, over the years, have had some really talented people that have been a part of Vigilance Entertainment Productions and our storytelling. And for, and I like to surround myself with people that get it and understand the passion that I have for something. And, because at the end of the day, we are stepping into very personal lives of people, and they trust us to carefully tell their story. So I take it very seriously. And I spend a great deal of time to build a relationship of comfortability with individuals so that they feel comfortable opening up to me, because I do all the interviews about whatever we're talking about, or whatever the actual subject is. And some of my best friends that my life are individuals that I film with, or I met through some story or some journey they were on, and it just deeply touched me. So I'm
So
very fortunate.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think sometimes when you don't overcomplicate something and then you just put yourself, especially when it comes to creativity, I don't know that you can really learn that. Not that classes. I mean, I went to film school, but it wasn't until I put myself out there to do the documentary, the my first documentary, that I understood what it takes to make one. So whatever I studied, it wouldn't have done anything if I didn't put myself out there on the field to try it out. And this is the first time I heard about your father's story. It's very interesting. I too, my mother passed away in 2019. She lived with us. She had dementia, and I was there too, and during her last breaths. And that too did something for me afterwards. Is when I started working with the Chaldean Cultural Center, something that I hadn't expected, but I felt that there was a different. I love storytelling. I believe in the power of storytelling, and that our community needs to share their stories that were oppressed for so long. And that the Chaldean Cultural Center for me was a way to help serve in that aspect. It's interesting how you felt that there was that service in storytelling, which I think sometimes is not, there's not enough attention given to that, because it seems like storytelling, especially with writers, or maybe in the earlier years, it's more like a self-expression, even in filmmaking, but you're using it as a form of service. And that's what I sense from all the work, the long list of works that you have done. um it really is, it's the impact that you're making. Like, we'll talk about now this project that you just did, Detroit City of Faith, which was amazing, how you showcase the different communities, how they celebrate their faith. I love that. I'd like for you to share about this film. Oh, this was just aired on PBS, and to tell us how this idea came about, and are people are still able to get a like access to this film? Can they purchase it somehow?
Sure, sure. So, um, to back up just a touch, in relation to the philosophy of service behind our storytelling, you know, listen, I've been so fortunate. I've traveled and lived all over the world. I've entertained high celebrity individuals. I've just had an incredible opportunity to do amazing things in my lifetime, and I think that at the core of who I am today and in the last 20 years has been how can my time on this planet be of benefit to the greater good of mankind. And so that's why we don't do zombie movies. I'm not documentary filmmaking is not for the faint-hearted. It is very complicated. There are no scripts. Sometimes it can take you years to accomplish something. Fundraising is just horrendously complicated, difficult. So we don't, it's not like we generate, we're not a financially extremely profitable company. We're just not. It's not why we do what we
You're not
do.
doing it for the money, definitely.
The money, yeah. But that's okay, because what I do it for, what touches me. So, when I get up in the morning, I can't wait to get to work, and I go to bed at night. I think about what I'm working on and what happened during the day, and I just feel good about what we do and who we are. So, putting that aside,
I mean,
Detroit.
given your description too, I just want to add, given the description of the lifestyle that you've led a very rich lifestyle. So, I mean, the reward is in doing that work where you're, even if you're not traveling, but I think going and sharing with these stories and connecting with the people is very enriching. But yeah, please tell us about the Detroit City of
Yeah,
Faith.
and by the way, it's extremely enriching. Like I said, some of my closest friends that I've made over the years are people that I spent time with in their life, and I was so drawn to their story, and we became really good friends because of it. Everything from amputee soldiers to blind carpenters and everything in between. So Detroit, we did Detroit City of Churches 2 years ago. Fortunate, it was awarded 4 Emmys, and it featured 17 different churches in Detroit. I wanted to tell the history of Detroit from the perspective of a spiritual leader and the historical churches in the congregation. How did they affect history in Detroit? How did Detroit's history affect them? And so that was the premise behind that film. It was very successful. And then, it did really well. And of course, everyone says, you're going to do a film number two. You're going to do a churches number two. And I thought, don't know if I want to do a church as number two, but I'd like to explore our ethnic cultures through a film about faith and what we all the word faith means different things to different people, and it's not me and my place to suggest what it should be or shouldn't be, but I felt the word faith could be thought of in a bigger context other than just spirituality. And so for me, one of the most courageous individuals has to be an immigrant. I mean, especially in the early years. I mean, to leave your family and your loved ones in a village or whatever and set off to a place called America in hopes that you're going to sustain and be able to flourish and then maybe bring your family over. I mean, that's courage. I mean, that's real courage. You don't it's you don't I don't know if you see a lot of that today. I mean, we probably do, but I mean, it's just real courage, especially those early immigrants. So I felt, well, that took faith. There was faith. There was vision, but there was faith that they had, that they were going to take their life and their culture and bring it to another place in the world and put down roots. And so I thought, well, let's do a film about faith, but let's focus on our various ethnic groups of Detroit and let them tell their story, how faith drove who they are and then who they are today and what that faith means to them. And so, yeah, the Chaldean community is significant to us in North America, but even more so here in Michigan. I mean, I think it's the largest Chaldean Iraqi community outside of Iraq.
No,
And
it is the largest in the world. It
in the
was
world now. So yeah, I mean,
over
this
the years. It's grown to be over, yeah, in the world.
and not to mention the impact they've had on our communities as leaders, as poets and writers and authors and artists and so on. So I just knew that's a very important story to tell, and so we were honored to be able to feature the Chaldean community in this film. And I think that the other thing about this film is it helps break down. I like subliminal little things that take place in a film that somebody won't see. So this helps build a better understanding of different ethnic groups. You get to learn about the Chaldean community, things that you maybe didn't know, or if you're outside that community, things that you didn't know or you didn't understand, you get served up to you, and then you can walk away. I have a whole new appreciation. I have a whole new level of respect for the Chaldean community, and we did that with the Armenian community, we did the Polish community, and so on and so on. It's just I'm tickled and thrilled that you and the Chaldean community love the film. So,
Oh, definitely. I mean,
honored that we could do it.
Thank you. I mean, when we were there at the premiere, we were also moved. I had some of family members that were with me, like my sisters and family members from the Chaldean Cultural Center and other, and some of our priests. And we were moved, not just the part about the Chaldeans, because that part we know it. We were honored to be a part of the documentary, of course, and that was touching. But on a bigger scale, we felt, and I think I shared this with you before, I felt like I was visiting the other countries, and it's so beautiful to feel that that's in our backyard. I used to travel a lot before I had kids and kind of settled more down and focused on them. And I remember even from seeing the trailer, I thought, wow, Keith, you're really bringing this to life. And I could see that what you see, the richness that you see everywhere that you go, you brought that forward through the film.
Yeah.
And you help us see that. That's the thing. It's like if we were to look into these details and get to know those communities, we would be just as entranced as you seem to be by it. And you did a wonderful job. So for us to be a part of that, that was just really amazing.
Yeah, and I'm really fortunate. We have a really, really great team. Brendan, who is our DP, and then Sarah is one of our producers, and Annie is one of our videographers, and Colin and Rachel and Matt. I mean, everybody works so passionately when we work on these projects, and it's exciting and it's heartwarming to see how they also step into the realm of wanting to tell a story. I mean, this isn't, visionalist. The word visionalist, I created it years ago. It's about, I believe that vision is important. I wrote a saying once called, to dream is to fantasize, to visualize is to expect. So the way I approach projects, when we visualize them and we start out to do them, I create an expectation. It's not a dream come true for me. It's an expectation. I know where we're going with this, but having a team that can understand that vision and step into that and be a part of it is really critical. I'm one guy. I don't do everything. I guide, I direct, I produce, but I need a really great team, and that's what's really important for any documentary filmmaker, for that matter, that you can create like-mindedness in what you're doing, because we're capturing life, and this it moves quick. And at times it's complicated, the things you're trying to capture, but it's important to the story. So you have to keep pushing on, and we do.
Yeah, and I did. Your team is great, actually. I mean, they're very responsive and they're very comfortable to work with. But my thing is, you had gifted me some books that I remember when I opened the package. The thing that came to my mind, and now when you're talking about these different projects, and I know right now you're working on a new project, which we'll talk about in a second, but how do you have time to do all of this? Seriously, like how, for someone, and I know you're a family man, so I know you work a lot, but you also have other things, and I'm hoping, you're enjoying life in other ways. How do you have the time, and what advice would you give people, so that oftentimes people that don't pursue their creative endeavors is because they say, oh, we don't have time, or there's always excuses. But I think you're a perfect person maybe that you can share this, is that how do you incorporate all of this into your life, and
So
people can learn from it in a way that people can learn from.
So it's a good thing my wife's not on this on this call, on this session.
Wait a minute, let me give her a call. What's her phone number?
She'd say, well, what do you think?
I'll interview her next week.
Say, what do you think he's doing at 8, 9, and 10 o'clock at night when we could be spending time together? I'm working on stuff. Listen, I have a superpower, and the superpower is I was a chef. I was a restaurateur, and I come from that mindset. So as a restaurateur chef, you juggle an astonishing amount of things in the course of your day. And your day is just filled with fixing problems and making sure your staff's running smoothly and your guests are smiling. That was the world of a chef. And so my life is very much like that. I am, I'm a 7-day-a-week kind of guy. I kind of do splits where I'll get in the office 7:30, and I'll work till 4 o'clock until I burn myself out, and I call it the day. And then about an hour and a half later, after some gym time and some meditation, no more than 20 minutes, because my kids will say, well, no, sometimes it's more than 20 minutes, Dad, but it's no more than 20 minutes. I put back on the creative work hat, and I get into it. So my days are long, but that's why I used to work as a chef. I'd work splits. I'd go in at 8 o'clock in the morning, work all day, leave around 4 o'clock. I'm doing the lifestyle is pretty much the same, and then by 6:30, I'm back in the game again, and I run it hard till 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Keith, maybe you have some Chaldean roots in you.
Well, I'm definitely Italian, so the Italian.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Italian French. So the Italian.
Why didn't you just say so from the beginning?
Italians and Chaldeans, I have a tendency of just working all day. But let me say this, though, I enjoy what I do, so I don't think of it as work as much as creative, directional driving of what needs to be done, and. And the film we're working on, ironically, is called Detroit City of Chefs. And something that's come up in the film that's now a common thread in the film, because it identified with it, and of course it represents me, is that chefs, by nature, most of them have some form of ADD. And I clearly was a poster child for that growing up. Didn't go to college, unscholastic. Food talked to me. So when I found food, and I love cooking, and I talked to me and I talked to it, I could understand food. Well, that creative process, it didn't matter if I worked 90 hours a week. I was doing something I enjoyed doing. I enjoyed taking something and turning it into something and then seeing somebody smile. I'm still cooking. I'm just using different ingredients. And so we have a and why do this probably answers one of the big questions of why do I have 4 projects going on when I could just have one in focus? I can't work like that. I have to have a lot of things happening all the time around me for me to build momentum. When things are not moving around me, I get stagnant and I
Maybe
just
this is the normal way to work. I don't know.
it's
It
good for
works
me.
for
Yeah,
me. I
and
the
it's not.
multi juggling as a mom, like sometimes people are like, how do you do what you do? And it's like, well, as a mom and you're like sticking food in one kid and then picking up the other kid before something happens and then having something on the stove. So right now when you're describing it, maybe these are lessons that we need to be okay with to
Yeah,
see.
they did a study about multitasking. Years ago they said multitasking is not good for you. Then, not too long ago, they said multitasking is actually a great thing because what happens during multitasking is sometimes you problem solve while working on one project. You're subconsciously solving a problem on another project. That happens with me all the time. So whether multitasking is good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's just the way at 64 years old, this dog's not changing. It's just the way it works for me. And it's not for everybody, and
No, exactly.
the rest of my team doesn't necessarily.
You probably drive them crazy. So
Well, I try not to drive them crazy. Yeah, the answer is I do drive them crazy, including my wife, my kids, everybody. It's just the way. Listen, we are here on this big ball for a minute amount of time. And the greatest currency we can have as a human being is time.
hmm.
And so often we forget that. And as we get older, we start understanding the significance of time and how you spend that time and who you spend that time with. And what you do with that time will define who you were. It'll define who you loved, who you liked, what you learned from, and so on. So I respect that time so much. And I think that going back to Survivor, I had a very poignant moment for me on that show because I was the last, the third one. I was the last one of the last ones to be voted off, if you will. But the last few days, I would wander off by myself and I'd go sit out on this ledge in the outback. There was no sound. There was nothing. There was just nature. There was nothing to impede your thought. And I sat there and reevaluated my life. And I thought about everything, the goods, the bads, bankruptcy, divorce, good times, bad times, kids, birth, everything in between. And for some reason, I guess it created some clarity for me that I never did that before. And if nothing else, it gave me a new appreciation and gratitude for my existence and everybody in my life. I mean, we are dealt the cards we're dealt with. That's your card. Those are your cards. What you do with them is really up to you. And if you can't do something great, forget the word great. If you can't do something that betters other people's lives in some way or form, being nice to people, great gestures, helping people out, helping other people, I feel sorry for you. I mean, I just think that's the greatest gift you can give yourself is seeing others smile from a contribution you made about them or for them. That's why I do what I do.
You know what, Keith? This is the first time you're always interviewing others. You've interviewed me before and, my colleagues, and you still are because you're still working with projects with the Chaldean Cultural Center. And I haven't had the chance to enjoy knowing this much about you. You're really inspiring. I know just seeing the books before I even started reading them, I was so inspired about one of them is about you being a grandfather. One of them is about the documentary and just seeing all this multifaceted. And I thought, you've really grabbed a hold of life and just taken every second and enjoyed it and experienced it and given into it and given and taken back. And you can see that with the multitude of work. So it's, so I'm gonna be, I know we have an upcoming meeting, and I'm gonna be like knocking on your more on your door a little bit more, because I thought this guy is filled with wealth of information and so much wisdom, and we need to learn more from you just by listening and watching what you're doing. Sometimes it's not even a conversation, but just watching what you've created. And I hope that this interview has inspired people the way it has inspired me, for myself, not just as a filmmaker, but the fact that you have done all these different creative things, and it seems like you treated them equally. That's the other beautiful thing. It wasn't like, well, I didn't, it's just you switched, and it was just such a beautiful transition, it seems like. And looking back, I'm sure there was challenges in the beginning, but what is the last word? I know there are sometimes youths, or just people in general, it doesn't even have to be youth, that kind of have lost their ways or have a hard time grasping something or follow, I think, too many rules. You didn't, and look at your success, right? What, last words that you would, we just have a couple of minutes left, and I just, what words would you give people that are trying to find their ways, or trying to find their talent, or putting out their talent out there?
Listen to your internal drumbeat. Listen, everybody in life marches to a different drumbeat. They do. Just fact is, listen to your internal drumbeat, and never, creative people, creative driven people. It's challenging because you're trying to help others see what's in your head about an idea that you have, and so by nature, human beings can be pessimistic and say, "Oh, that's a silly idea," or this and that. If you feel really strongly about something, don't give it up. Don't give it up. And remember the journey you're on. You know, we did a film about depression and suicide. And one thing that I really learned importantly about life is that without the really complicated bad times, the frustrating times, the harrowing times in our life, can we really understand and appreciate the good times? They're together. You cannot have just great life, wonderful times all the time. That'd be so boring. At the same time, you don't want to be in a hole all the time either. But just know that it's a cycle. It'll pass. It'll pass. The smiles will come. The sun will shine. And you'll still have other days that are not so fun. But perseverance and digging out deep inside yourself and just pushing on is your story. It's your story. Let your story guide you. What do you want your story to be on that dash, on that funeral, on that headstone? Born here, left there. What do you want that dash to tell everybody? That's the question you must ask yourself, and then you go out and tell that story.
Keith, thank you so much. This has been a lovely interview. I look forward to working
Oh, my honor.
projects. Thank you so much. I know we'll have you back because, again, we're working together on some things, and I would like you to come back and share some more.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Like I said, you're driving the train. I don't have to do a thing. I love this.
I know this was fun for me too, because I'm listening to all the stuff that I haven't had the chance to receive from you because you've been busy working on us. So thank you, Keith.
Thank you. It's my honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for watching, and have a wonderful day.